Hi, everybody. Yeah, like Marina said, I'm Tina Lee. I'm about to share my screen so I can start sharing a presentation with you. What I want to talk about today is basically how you can balance long-term goals and short-term kind of survival techniques, a little bit about time management, and just some kind of basic tips for how you can start to get into the time management game, because it's something that a lot of people don't think about until they're older, but you can already start using it at school and finding out ways how you can plan for long-term things. And I don't mean like retirement. I mean like how you can start, making your business, getting your art out to the world, organizing your activism, whatever it might be that you're excited about and turns you on. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Let's see. Okay. Right. So like I said, I'm going to be talking today about time management and goal setting. I can see that I can't really see the chat from where I am right now. So Marina, if you want to just jump in, if there's a question or if somebody has their hand raised. I don't know how many of you guys are native English speakers. I guess most of you, but if I'm talking too fast or if you have some confusion about something I'm saying, please feel free to jump in at any time and just ask me to elaborate or to slow down, and I will be happy to do so. So the first question about time management is this question, like with imposter syndrome, sort of like, do I even need to have a plan? Am I important enough for that? And I just want to assure everyone that yes, everyone can start to plan out and think about their goals for life, can think about how they can get their schedule more in order. It's not just for like high-powered executives. I, for example, I'm a project manager, an activist, a mother, and I have to organize my time around the kind of objectives of meeting with my friends, doing my activist work, getting my work done, picking up my kid from school. All of that becomes incredibly complicated as time goes on to get everything into order. What adds more complication to the thing is when you are in the COVID times that we are in right now, where you're just kind of exhausted, have trouble getting things done, have trouble making time for your interests or for the stuff that you're passionate about. And so I want to kind of encourage you to acknowledge that it's really difficult, but still try to find some ways to organize your life in the way that's the best setup actually for you to accomplish things that you want to accomplish. So a short word about what is the difference between long-term goals versus short-term survival. So the things that you have to do, right? You have to pay the rent. You might have to take care of a child or a parent or a roommate. You have to deal with your medical needs, your medical appointments. You have to deal with getting food on the table, just, the basic stuff about your everyday life. So these things are the sort of non-negotiables that you anyways have to deal with that should always be sort of prioritized. But then there is the stuff that is more like your long-term goals. So those things might be finding or connecting to your passion or getting to the next level if you've already found your passion. Stuff that you can live without, but that makes your life worth living. Where you are versus where you end up, and also things that require multiple steps, like a doctor's appointment, that's one thing. But if you want to promote a website or get your music out there or become a distinguished professional in your field, whatever it might be, all of these things require a number of different steps. And it can be that your short-term goals, like taking care of a parent or dealing with your school or something like that, these things can either complement or clash with your long-term goals. So the hope that you're always trying to do is to try to find a way to get everything into alignment with each other where you're not sacrificing one for the other. First, you might say, maybe all of you already have goals, I'm not sure, but if you don't, then one of the things that can help you to sort of clarify what your first kind of goal thing, just for sort of practice tip, would to be to make a list. So take 5 minutes, get a big blank sheet of paper or a whiteboard or however you feel comfortable sort of jotting things down and make a list of all the things you want to achieve over the next 5 years. So it could be learn German, write a book, get a record contract, perform in front of an audience, whatever it could be. Pick 3 of them and really think those things through. And then finally pick the one goal that you'd like to do for the first year. What comes first? If you don't have any goals, this is also a good tip to start, or a good exercise to start thinking about what those goals might be. If you think about things in a more long-term way, like what do I want to do in the next 5 years, it can help you to sort of clarify. I often think of things that I want to accomplish before I die, for example, before I go as long-term as you need to do in order to give yourself some goals. And if you find that you still don't really have any desires over like, I just want to survive the next week, or I want to finish the school year, or whatever it might be, then start keeping a journal and thinking about things that inspire you and collecting ideas for stuff you want to do. I suspect that most of you have a couple of things in mind already that have been bugging you, things that you have been thinking about, like, oh, I would really like to get that done. And so the best thing would be to just pick one and to start with and see how you do it and really focus in. So for each goal, let's say I have the goal of, I want to perform at an open mic night. I want you to really think through all of the little baby steps that it would take for you to get there. And I don't know how many of you went to school in the United States and took like elementary science classes, but we had always a experiment that they did to teach us the scientific method, which was that we would have to write down instructions for how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And the joke about this kind of experiment is that the other team had to follow exactly what we had written down. So for example, if we wrote down, take peanut butter and jelly and put on bread, that is going to be someone just putting a jar of peanut butter on one slice and a jar of jelly on the other slice. So really getting into like the minuscule details, take a tablespoon of butter, dip knife into peanut butter jar, spread tablespoon of peanut butter onto bread, like really breaking it down. So thinking about how clear you can be about exactly each step and exactly what each thing will help you to be more realistic about how much time and effort will take. Like for instance, if you're trying to find an open mic night place to perform at, right? That's step one, like where would I even do it? You might think like, oh, I'll just think of one and go there, but actually it might take some time to find one. Who's open during COVID? Who's doing open mic stuff? So thinking about how you break things in and be realistic about how long each thing will take. There is this tool called SMART goals, with SMART being a mnemonic device for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So specific means being exactly what I actually want to do. Measurable means making it possible for you to break it down into steps, like how often per week, how much time. Achievable meaning don't expect something that is totally out of the bounds for what you can possibly do. Try to make it something which feels doable at first, and then you can reach for the stars. Realistic is similar. And timely is to, I think they just threw realistic and achievable in there actually to make it sound like smart, because smart isn't as cool. But anyways, timely would be then also having a deadline or setting a time thing. So for instance, let's say my goal is I want to get in shape. Okay, but what kind of shape? If you went to the gym and talked to a, fitness instructor or whatever, they would also be like, great, what's in shape for you? Because, either you're already in shape, or what kind of shape do you want to be in? That's not a SMART goal, right? I want to look great, whatever, or I want to feel great, or I want to do whatever. So think about what actually that would mean. So for instance, I want to get in shape, a more SMART goal style would be, I want to run 3 times a week for 30 minutes until I can run a 5K. So I've made it realistic because 3 times a week instead of every single day is maybe realistic with my time schedule. Until I can run 5K means it's measurable. And it has a deadline in a way. Once I've run a 5K, I can set the next goal. Maybe next I want to run a 10K, or maybe I find that that's like a perfectly reasonable amount of time for me to commit to my exercise goals. And now I can move on to something else. Another example would be, I want to increase my social media presence. So a specific goal of that would be, I want to gain 1,000 Instagram followers by March 2022. You would then have to break it into, how can I do that? What do I need to learn about Instagram to make sure that I get that presence? How can I gain followers? And as you move forward with your goal, you'll see, okay, I'm gaining like 5 followers a week. That's probably not realistic anymore that I get 1,000 by March 2022, whatever. And keeping in time and means of like being realistic or being relevant. If you have the goal to increase your social media presence, is that actually relevant to what you want to achieve? So in terms of, okay, I want to make a name for myself in Berlin's music scene or whatever, maybe Instagram is a reasonable goal for that, but maybe it's not. So you have to really also think about, do I do things because other people are doing them, or I do things because they actually do correspond to exactly what I specifically want to achieve and the way in which I want to achieve it. once we have established some goals and established some sort of steps for these goals, the next thing to do is to map it out, to find a way to actually put those goals down on paper and attach them to a sort of schedule for yourself. I have a picture there of a kind of Post-it calendar. And one thing to think about is, what kind of ways do you collect your thoughts? How do you schedule your time? I have worked with a lot of students over the last couple of years, and what I've noticed is a lot of people don't have any kind of day planner. Some people use their iPhone calendar to put in appointments. Other people have like a journal where they kind of jot notes down, and then there's a bunch of notes just crammed on paper and they have to like flip back. Other people might be a little bit more organized than that and have something out. You need to figure out a way in which you can write down things that you need to do, make appointments, time block, whatever it might be, in a way that it's actually going to be something that you use. So it's wonderful to have like a beautiful, gorgeous journal that you hardly ever look at and hardly ever use, or to use an iPhone tracker, like a Todoist kind of app or something like that. But you find that after a couple of weeks, you actually never use it. So you need to find something that you actually do check all the time, you actually do use, and that actually makes sense with your style of learning and your style of self-organization. You may have already noticed by now what kind of learner you are, whether you have a sort of oral learning skill, whether you're a more visual thinker, or whether you're someone that needs to write things down or say them out before you can actually remember them. So keep that in mind also in terms of when you're going to be like planning things and scheduling things. What kind of learner am I? What's the best way to do it? So you need to find time in your work week. And this is actually slightly more complicated task than everybody thinks, because I think that most of us think we kind of live one kind of life, but in reality, we live a different kind of life. We think, for example, like, oh, I'm a night owl, but actually maybe you're not a night owl. Maybe just all your roommates is always stay up drinking beers and you stay up with them too. And then you're super exhausted in the morning and you're actually not a night owl, but you artificially stay awake with drugs and alcohol. No judgment, done the same thing. Maybe you have been trying to get yourself to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and actually your body does not like that at all. And you are someone that needs to stay up at night and work. So being realistic about what your actual lifestyle is and what like fits and makes sense also for your body is really important. So I would urge you, if you haven't done this, to kind of take a week or so and try waking up really early, and try waking up at like 9 and try going to sleep really late, and seeing which ones kind of make you feel good. When do you wake up and you're super drowsy? Are you someone that needs to really get like 9 hours of sleep, and if you don't get them, you're a wreck? This will help you to kind of plot out your week and make everything make sense. I know when you're young, it's just easiest to do what everybody else is doing, but you may find out that you are really someone that needs to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning to get anything done. And if that's the case, you should go with that, because finding that out now is going to be really useful. So once you have your sort of goals in mind and okay, let's say with the jogging example, I'm going to need like 3 blocks of 30 minutes 3 times a week. How do I know where I can fit in those 30-minute blocks? The first thing I'm going to need to do is know what else is in my week. What else is non-negotiable? When are classes? When are activist meetings? When are, when is sleeping time? When is cooking time? Be really, really honest and about how much time things take you. If you put in like 20 minutes for dinner every day, that's not realistic, right? It takes you time to cook. It takes you time to eat. It takes you time to shop. All of this stuff might actually be more like an hour and a half. So really think about actually what your week looks like and block it off. I mean, visually block off the times that are available. You can also set sleep and wake times on your phone to make sure that you kind of stick with it once you realize what your schedule is. Time blocking is one tool that people can use to make sure that they actually accomplish the task that they want to do. So we've already blocked off all of these different times of week that are sort of non-negotiable. What time blocking does is say, I'm going to take a block of time and apply myself to just doing the one thing that I'm going to do there. So let's say I'm trying to learn a new language, like German. I could kind of pick it up throughout the day and do it at various different times. I'm having a normal day where I wake up, I have breakfast, I send a couple of emails, I send a couple of text messages, then I do some schoolwork, then I mix it up. What time blocking says is like, no, we're going to spend a couple of hours at a time on one specific thing and nothing else. you know, I'm going to block off like a serious period of time for socializing with my friends and making dinner or something like that. And I'm not going to do anything else in between. I'm not going to be sitting there also while I'm there, like checking my emails and sending phone calls or sending text messages to people. I'm going to be focused on what I'm actually doing. And similarly, if I'm going to do social media, I'm going to block off a time period to actually do social media, not just sporadically do it throughout the entire day where it eats up all of the other time that I wanted to do. So when you time block, you basically take that kind of schedule or calendar or whatever you've done and really block off time for the specific goals that you want to do. And it might not be that you need to do it every day. There's also something called day theming. So when you have a day themed time blocking schedule, you would say, okay, I have these various things I need to do all week, but I really want to get ahead, let's say in my music career. So you'd say, okay, Monday's the day I set aside for writing. On Tuesday, I have a bunch of German admin shit I have to take care of, because we all do all the time. On Wednesday, I clean my house. On Thursday, I record. And on Friday, I post new music. That's my schedule. That's what I do throughout the week. There's also this thing called the Pomodoro method, which is really effective for people who have trouble concentrating. If you do work which requires you to sit at your computer, it can really be that you get lots of like buzzes and notifications and things that take you away from whatever you're doing. For example, I'm often in a situation where I have to write and I sit down with my blank computer screen to write. And instead I get an email message coming up. I get a text message, I get a WhatsApp message, I get a Signal message, like, kill me. With the Pomodoro method, what you do is you set a timer for 25 minutes. You're only going to do one task during that time. So no matter what else is kind of pinging in the background, you're going to make sure that you're not doing anything else until the buzzer rings. And then when your timer stops for 5 minutes, do whatever the hell you want, and then come back to it for another 25 minutes. So like 2 Pomodoros would be an hour, right? So if I've time blocked an hour for writing music, I'm going to really sit there and concentrate on just that one thing, and come back and, you know, take 2 5-minute breaks throughout that time. And whatever I've managed to accomplish by the end of it, great. Now I'm moving on to the next thing. I'm not going to shame myself for not having done everything, but I'm going to make sure that I get that time blocked off and actually dedicate myself to doing that one thing. Not sit there and think I'm doing it, but actually spend the whole time on Instagram or sending text messages to people. So those are kind of 2 techniques for how you can kind of block off your time more effectively. There are other ones, and there are lots of different things that one can do depending on kind of what your obligations are to those around you and how much, how many things you have to fit into your week. But you might find that you have more time than you think if you actually do schedule your time, as opposed to just like randomly coasting throughout your week and doing whatever pops up at any one moment. What these kind of things also allow you to do is to sort of prioritize what you actually want to accomplish in your week rather than being buffeted by the demands of other people. If you know I've blocked this time off for one thing, it's also easier for you to say no to something else that comes in the way, or to some other obligation or idea that comes in at the moment. If you're sitting in your room, you say, okay, this is the day that I do this. This is the hour that I do this. And someone comes in and says, like, you want to get a coffee? It's easier for you to go like, no, this is when I do this, than it is if you kind of have no plan and you just do whatever. Now, again, do you want to have your life that organized? This is up to you. These are trade-offs that everybody has to make. Each of us inhibit multiple roles in our life. You know, you guys might be students. You might have to be a friend. There might be times when you do need to go get a coffee with someone because it's more of a priority to go help your friend than it is at that moment to get whatever this other goal that you want to accomplish is. And it's also really important to recognize that whatever goal you're focusing on is one that makes less time for something else. So there's always a trade-off when you decide that you want to prioritize one area of your life over another. If you decide that you want to, learn another language and you really want to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning every single day and get this done until you've mastered Beats 5, that means that you might not be able to go out as much because you have dedicated yourself to getting up early in the morning. Similarly, if you decide that you want to get involved in politics, that might mean you have to get involved in activist meetings that go really late. And that means that you might not want to schedule early morning classes for that time. So being thoughtful about what you actually do want to prioritize, what is really important to you, also allows you to sort of make kinder decisions that allow you also time to rest and relax and inhibit these other roles that you have in your life more fully than if you just say yes to everything. So it's important for you to be realistic about how long certain things will take, but also ruthless about saying no to things that don't fit into your goals. We often get asked to do things. Well, I wouldn't say often. It can happen that you get asked or invited to something that's like flattering, and you want to take it because you think that this opportunity might not arise again. I would urge you to, from a really young age, already let go of that way of thinking that every opportunity you get is one that you may never get again. Because first of all, it's not true. Second of all, it's a way that people can take advantage of you by saying, you should take this opportunity to do this thing because you'll be in the spotlight and you'll get experience and you'll have exposure and all this kind of stuff. If it actually doesn't fit any of your goals, let somebody else have it. Let somebody else have that exposure. I have a friend, for example, who is running a small business, and at her church, she was asked to teach Sunday school, which for her is a really big deal. I would rather, do a lot of things than teach Sunday school, but some people like that kind of thing. That's cool. So here she is in this opportunity. It means that everyone at the church thinks she's really great. It means that she's, a prominent member of the community. So it's really flattering to be offered to do this thing, but it takes away from her other goals of raising her disabled child and taking care of her small business. So she had to say no. And when she did, another one of her friends was like, oh, I was going to be so mad at you if you took it because I know you don't even want to do it. And I've actually been dreaming of doing this forever. So when you say no, and when you allow yourself to actually focus on your priorities, it's not only good for you, but it's also good for your community because you allow other people that are really destined for this opportunity to step into that role, into something where they can really focus on it, rather than you just taking on every single thing that gets offered to you because you think that opportunity won't arise again, and then making the mistake of overburdening yourself and not being able to give enough time to all the different things that you could do. So I think that that's important to keep in mind as you get kind of offered small jobs or teaching assistant positions or being the head of an organization or of an activist group, that it's really cool that you got offered, but it should also be possible for you to say no if it is not something that you genuinely are super enthusiastic about and genuinely want to do. And when you do say no, you're also doing something generous because you're allowing somebody else to get that opportunity. One of the other things that can be really difficult to balance in this whole thing is how you can spend time with friends while you at the same time, or with me at least, with political activism groups, how you can balance this kind of time with the time that you have to focus on your other kind of goals, your school goals, your language goals, your music goals, whatever. So one of the kind of questions would be, when you do these events, to kind of be conscious about yourself, do I actually really love spending 48 hours at a club? Be honest. Everybody else might love it. Maybe it's not for you. Maybe it gives you the energy that you need for the whole week and it gives you a lot of excitement and creativity. Then great. But be really honest with yourself about whether or not you're doing things that actually give you energy and uplift you and help you to move forward, or whether they drain you and make you exhausted. And the same thing is true with political activism groups. Even though it can be really great to be involved in them, sometimes you're in one where like you do not click with the members or you do not click with their style of doing things, and it ends up draining you. If you stay in these things, you also become a drain on the other people in the groups, right? Because you're not genuinely into it. So again, it's about being generous with yourself and generous with others, to be really honest about, what do I actually like? I don't just go to things because my friends are there. I don't just go to things because I think I should be interested in it, or I think that other people expect me to be interested in it, but get involved in things that actually do really make sense for you. Don't fight against your natural rhythm. One thing you could do to help yourself sort of get a grip on what your natural rhythms are and whether you're kind of fighting against yourself at the moment is to just spend 1 or 2 weeks writing down actually how you literally spend your day. So get a calendar or a notebook and truly mark down like how you spent your day, how you spent the hours. So do like a log. look back at the week and then kind of put things together. How long did I spend shopping for groceries? How long did I spend hanging out with friends? How long did I spend studying? How long did I spend sleeping? And check it out and see if you're surprised by anything. Did you actually spend like 3 hours grocery shopping and you thought you usually spend like, 25 minutes? This is also what people do with budgets, right? You can also take a look at how much money you spend. I'm often like estimating that I'm like, oh, I spend like $200 a month on food or something. But when I look at it, it's like, no, it's like a lot more than that. So you can be surprised at how you actually spend your time. You might also be surprised how little sleep you're getting. And then at the end of the week, when you feel really exhausted and you're like, how can I be so exhausted? You're like, oh, right, I got 5 hours of sleep every night. No wonder. So you can figure out what's actually going on in your week and figure out how you want to schedule things. I did this with a couple of friends not that long ago, sat down and really looked at our schedules and looked at exactly what we were doing. And I realized that because I felt obligated to stay in touch with my friends in the United States, who are all on a different timeline than I am, right? Because they're 6 hours later. I would often, when I was really exhausted at night, pick up the phone, call my mother, call my friends, check in on people, have a glass of wine. And this was keeping me up until like, 11:30 or 12 at night. It was exhausting me and draining me. And I actually didn't need to do it. My friends do not need me to call them every week. And I also do not give them my best self when I only call them when I'm exhausted, right? In the meantime, this was also taking time away from other stuff I wanted to be doing and how I wanted to spend my mornings because I was more tired. So be really honest with yourself and pare down to stuff that actually matters, that actually doesn't drain you and that makes you feel good and doesn't fight against like who you are. I have a recommendation. I am not like a representative of this group in any way. It's not advertisement, but I have something that I really love, which is called the Passion Planner. This is basically a book, which is a planner. It has, as you can see here, a personal to-do list and a work to-do list. And you can also see that this person here used it to time block, right? So they time blocked off time for work, for homework, for the gym, etc. It can be a really useful way to kind of plot out your week. I've used a bunch of other different planners like Moleskine planners and things like that. I think that this one is the best. So if you are on the scrounge for a way to organize, and trust me that once Corona is over, things are also going to get a lot more busy. This would be something to check out. If you don't have the money for it, because I think they cost about $30, they have free downloads of PDFs of these planners. So you can also just print them off. If you have a school printer that allows you to print for free, that can be a good option. Print off the PDFs and get them bound. I recommend it to all students. I love it, but I'm an enthusiastic person about this, but there are other ways to plan as well. So these are the main things I wanted to talk about. Basically just making sure that you can go step by step, that you can actually focus on what works for you and what makes sense for your actual life, not for the life that you think you might have or the life that you imagine you have, and to actually focus on how you can get your goals done. And yeah, sometimes it's really exhausting. We're not capitalist robots, and we don't want to spend all of our time just doing tasks that lead us nowhere. But that's why it's really important for us to prioritize those things that bring us joy and bring us life and make us feel really happy. I think that it's also a political act in a way to prioritize those things that actually do bring you pleasure, not just the things that bring you success or money or recognition or whatever, to kind of recognize that although you're encouraged to spend every single moment of your day doing something productive, that's not realistic. It's especially not realistic right now. It can be exhausting to kind of think of your life that way, but I want to encourage you to sort of plan out also times for rest and relaxation and pleasure just as much as you would plan out anything else in your life. And like I said, if you are kind of realistic about your body's natural rhythms, about, am I someone that needs to eat 3 big meals a day, or do I need to eat 5 small meals a day? Do I need to wake up at 6, or do I need to wake up at 12? All of these things are perfectly valid. And it's not anything that you should be ashamed of, but it's just about being honest with yourself and honest about what you can kind of accomplish in the same amount of hours as everybody else does. And just because you watch everyone around you sort of like hustling and getting millions of things done and getting book deals and, you know, having millions of followers on social media and becoming famous or whatever, like that is not your metric of success. Your metric of success is, am I aligning what I need to do to survive with what I love to do and also feeling energized about it? Because you could for sure use your anxiety as something to push you to run much harder than everybody else. You'll crash and burn at one point though if you continue in this way. It's not, the point is not to exhaust yourself. The point is to be organized and be aligned with your goals and, you know, your passions and who you actually are. This can also be especially difficult for certain groups of people because of the fact that marginalized groups of people especially are not encouraged ever to say no to anything or to take time for themselves or to rest or take time off. And there are really some downsides, depending on who you are, to you know, being selfish, right? So they've done plenty of different studies where they have shown that, for example, a woman who uses negotiating tactics in a meeting with a boss is perceived of as being political or selfish and also sees herself that way, whereas a man doing the same thing doesn't. Obviously that's bullshit and that's a problem of patriarchy, but we have to recognize that we grew up in a patriarchal and sexist and racist and homophobic and you know, transphobic society. And because of this, we all kind of have those things in our mind, even if we don't want to accept them. So you have to fight against them. And one of the things that I think can be helpful to think about that is to think about, for example, when you're worried about what it would be like to promote yourself or, you know, get your money situation together or actually run after your goals and really accomplish them. If you feel this tinge of sort of shame about thinking about that, like, oh, well, then everyone's going to think that I'm full of myself, or that I think I'm such a great artist, or, you know, that I think I'm special. Think about why that might bother you. Interrogate the source of that shame and try to question it. I'm not saying it's easy to question the sort of mindset that you were raised in and the mindset of our society, or to take it away totally, but you can question it and you can ask yourself, is that really real or is that a story I'm telling myself? Actually, does anybody really sit around and think that I'm selfish or egotistical when I post my art on the internet, or when I work on myself, when I take time away from my friends groups to work on my language skills or to write or to do music? Am I actually imagining that everyone thinks that that's egotistical and selfish? And also, do I care if other people think that? I want to introduce this concept to you, which you probably heard of, which is thirst versus shame. We live in this shame-based culture. The patriarchy thrives on shame as a way of control. So especially what this is about is shame about desire, right? Sexual desire, but also all sorts of other types of desire are considered to be shameful depending on who's doing it, right? If you are a powerful person, it's totally fine to be shamelessly ambitious and to be totally transparent about what you want and why you want it. We might think sometimes, like sarcastically, oh God, you know, someone who's open about their wishes and their desire, how embarrassing, I would never. But you're doing that to yourself too, right? Because if you think it's embarrassing for other people to be open about what they want, then maybe you're also embarrassed yourself about that. I would try to think about how you can interrogate yourself on these topics. Being thirsty, right? Have you heard that term? Like, oh, that's so thirsty. That person just posted, says a thirsty selfie. That means like that they did something that showed you that they want something, right? Why is that embarrassing and why is that shameful? Is there shame actually for you in wanting to do better, in wanting to, I don't know, drink less, get better sleep, be in better shape, or to get good grades, or to make money, or to be famous? Is it embarrassing for you to want those things? And if it is, why? Think about it. Is there any amount of space that you could take up in this world that would bother nobody? I would say no, especially not for those of us that are from different genders or are POC or are from any kind of historically marginalized group. There's no amount of space that you can take up that people are comfortable with, right? This is something that requires you to deal with it, but also to say, okay, maybe I don't care then. Maybe I can take up as much space as I want, and I have to base those things on my own values and my own ethics, not on what other people think is appropriate. I'm going to allow myself to be thirsty and not to be shamed about it. To conclude, I want you to think about your goals, and I want you to go after them and try to organize your life in a way that you can best achieve them. Not because you need to make more money, not because you're a capitalist robot, not because society expects this of you, but because what you want for your life and how you want to live it is part of your value system. And honoring that is a part of honoring your self-worth. It is a political act. And I also would encourage you to think about it in a way that doing what you're meant to do and what you're passionate about is also something that helps other people. It's something that makes the world a better place. If there were fewer people that were doing jobs that they hate and following passions that they actually don't have, then people would be a lot less unhappy in this society. So I'll conclude it there, and I'd be very happy to take some questions, or if people just want to have a convo about it. Sorry, I need to figure out how to stop sharing. There we go.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Tina. I mean, it's something that I feel like this is a question, I guess, / conversation point, either or, is something I've been talking about with friends recently, and has come up now that with a lot of people, most people working at home and stuff, there's kind of this, there's sort of this difficulty of like managing your time with what are you doing at work and what's, at home, because now there are two lives very intertwined, because, people might be responding, they're working most in the same place, they eat dinner every night. Do you have any tips, I guess, on how to kind of, how to go about kind of like really setting that boundary between your work life and your home life when working from home?
Sure.
As a part of setting, you know what I mean? Like, because that's something I certainly have been struggling with is, finding a line between the two.
I would be curious how it is for other people. For me, the coronavirus pandemic has been so like exhausting that, for example, on the weekends, I literally do no work. I used to actually like go to the office every day, but because I was so busy doing other stuff at the office, I would often work at home too. And now it's like, I'm literally so overwhelmed and exhausted that I absolutely cannot do any work when I'm at home. So I really turn it off. I've also decided like on the weekends to do a lot more artwork. And so I kind of like really like put my computer away and get my art stuff out, like crowd out the space. And I think that sometimes making that kind of visual representation for yourself of like, okay, I'm not working right now. What are the things that I associate with work, right? Maybe my laptop. Also, really use the tools that you have on your phone. You can put things on silent. You can put things on mute. You can take things off of your home screen. Like try to find as many tricks as you can possibly do to remind yourself that like you are not supposed to do this.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like there are definitely tool stuff in it because it's difficult sometimes. Do you respond to that email? Maybe it's your 5 or 6 is your cutoff time, or I'm not working anymore. But you get an email from a coworker or your boss saying, "Hey, can this get done tonight?" And you're like, normally at the office, we'd say, say, "Oh well, I'll do that tomorrow. I'm leaving the office." But now, you don't really have that same logic anymore. So it's an interesting time. And I like what you said about, you're really focusing on the things, your passions, like things you just enjoy, something like painting, whether it's you're playing music, but like really distinguishing between what is your work and what are your passions. I think that's super interesting as well.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes these things overlap, right? You might make money from your passion. It might be that you want to make money from your passion eventually, but that's also not why you have to do it, right? You don't owe anybody to be good at your art. You don't owe anybody to be good at anything. You don't owe anybody to be pretty or good or, the best at anything. You do stuff because it makes you happy and brings you alive. It can be that those things turn into something that you can make some money from. And if you go in that direction, that's great. But making time for yourself to actually focus on what brings you joy and what makes you feel alive ends up being something that pays off dividends in other parts of your life. Because if you shut those things off, it can end up going other places too, right? It can end up making you more bitter and not as good at other parts of your life. If you get good at something that you love, even if you're not good at it, it can actually lead to a lot of creativity and joy in the other areas of your life that you need to be good at.
Oh, definitely. It's it makes me think this, there's this any movie recommendation, Soul. It sort of hits on this idea of people's is your, you know, defining like are your passions who you are, that kind of thing. It's just reminded me of this talk. But definitely I think with, you know, like people really like having those activities that are like your peaceful things or things that just sort of, you know, putting your phone away or, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I also think that there's a lot of encouragement now because of social media to be like totally badass at something before you start doing it, you know, like to be the best.
I feel like there's a lot of and you kind of hit on this, like you just, and I think like social media I think gives this sense of pressure that we always need to be busy, we always need to be doing things. And I feel like even maybe now because everyone's working at home, there's more pressure to be doing things all the time. And social media can definitely be, I think, like give us this feeling or this false impression that everybody's really just crushing it. Everybody like, wow, look what all these people are doing. Which I think can be a bit hurtful at moments, or like it's not useful necessarily. So it's good to be able to like take time to shut that out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not useful. And also it's really important to rest and relax. Like your brain really needs it. It's it causes like not having sleep for 2 or 3 days is about as bad as having like a disease or being you know, having been in a car accident or something like that. Like it's really fucked with you. So you need to try to get as much rest as there as you possibly can. But that also means sometimes not just resting during the day, but like, for example, if you're cooking dinner, not being like, okay, I'm going to cook dinner and I'm going to be like also working on this thing at the side. Like, no, just cook dinner. Note and cook dinner, whatever. But like, you know, actually do one thing at a time to the extent that you can. I think we're also encouraged to sort of multitask all the time. Like, okay, on the way to work on the U-Bahn, I should be listening to German tapes or whatever. It's like one thing.
Just go the damn U-Bahn.
Monotask, not multitask. Yeah.
Sure. It looks like we got a question from anonymous attendee. Tina, do you have any workshops or material for time management / goal setting accessible anywhere online?
I actually don't. Like I said, I would recommend getting a passion planner and or following them on Instagram because they have a lot of also like time management tips that I love. There are a number of different books on this subject. One of the most famous ones is called Getting Things Done. I forget who the author of that is just the moment, but it's a very famous book. And if you find it, in terms of goal setting more generally, I'm like someone who loves self-help books. I have to tell you, like, I really do. I know they're cheesy as hell, but like, I find it very fascinating to see what people have considered to be good self-help throughout the ages. And there's 2 books I would recommend to read for like kind of long-term goal setting while like really like keeping your gut in check because it's cheesy. The one is a classic. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And he literally starts you out being like, okay, you're at your funeral. What do you want them to be talking about you? What do you want them to say? And that's like a scary way to start a conversation about what you want to accomplish in your life, but it is actually really effective. Like, what would you like people to say at your funeral? Do you want them to say like, she was an amazing mom and cook, always had food on the table? Like, I'm like, no. Or do you want them to be like, you know, I can't believe that she was the first person to walk on Mars. You know, it was a really like whatever it is. Think about what you want to be done at the end of your life. Like start from the end and start walking towards there. Another kind of updated version of this is called Everything is Figure Outable by Maria Forleo. And again, like cheese factor alert to the max, but she is really good at kind of harping in on like what is standing in your way from doing that thing that you wanted to do. And really like that she has kind of a workshop throughout the book that shows you how to sort of talk yourself out of kind of also the harmful self messages that you give yourself that prevents you from taking bigger steps. And I really want to emphasize that I don't mean like starting your business or becoming a world famous pop star or whatever. Like really just little goals that you want to do. Like, okay, I want to get my budget under control. I want to get my bureaucracy in check. I want to apply for residency. There's so many different things that you stop yourself from doing because you're, you know, because you're busy with other stuff, because you're disorganized. I would just urge you to kind of be able to take control and say, like, I get to be the one who decides how I spend my time. And the best way that I can do that is actually pay attention to how I spend my time and what works for me and what actually doesn't. Not what works for all my friends, not what works for everyone on Instagram. or TikTok, not what, you know, I think makes me happy, but actually makes me exhausted.
For sure, I really like that. And quick announcement to people, we got about 4 minutes, 3 minutes left. So any last minute questions, feel free to drop them in the chat before we close off. One final part I really liked is that at least it's came to my mind is, you know, kind of validating all goals of all sizes, not just, you know, like you said, I'm gonna walk on Mars, I'm gonna be the next Ariana Grande. You know, it's like all goals are very all goals are valid. You know, I think that's like I think that's important to remember. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's also this great book, the chick who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, what is her name? She wrote a book called Big Magic, which is about art and creativity. And there was one part of it I thought was really touching where she talks about a friend of hers who was like 55 and she always, her whole life had always wanted to figure skate. And she talked herself out of it because she's like, okay, who wants to see a 55-year-old figure skater? That's embarrassing. People who figure skate start when they're like, you know, 8 years old, and then they're famous by the time they're 20, and then that's it for them. And just all of a sudden at 55 was like, screw it, I don't care, I'm going to try and do this. And didn't do it because she became, and the end of the story is not, oh, and then she became the first 55-year-old famous figure skater. The end of the story was, and then she did figure skating and she felt happy because she did something she liked and it made her, you know, she was getting something, doing something that she enjoyed. And I think that that's also part of it, is not always having a goal in mind because it's going to make you famous, but doing stuff because your heart cries out for it, because you enjoy it, because you love it. It can actually lead to side effects in the rest of your life, that you are able to go for the promotion, that you're able to speak up for yourself. If you kind of take on this confidence of being responsible for what makes you happy, and not letting yourself get talked out of it because you think it's embarrassing to want things.
Absolutely, I love it. And I guess so. Our final question before we close off from anonymous attendee: do you have any tips for procrastination, like how to stop procrastinating? Facts.
Yeah, I think that first of all, writing something down is really powerful. Like writing down what you're going to do, and also being actually realistic. A lot of times when we're procrastinating because we're trying to buy back time from ourselves that we wasted on other stuff. So for example, there's this phenomenon with mothers of small children that they stay up till like 4 o'clock in the morning, like scrolling through the internet. And the reason is because they feel so out of control with the rest of their day. They had no time to do anything for themselves, that they sort of win back this time for themselves at night. They're like, haha, I'm being bad. Probably you've done that for yourself too. Like, you know, you're supposed to get to work, but instead you're like, haha, I'm going to be really bad and like watch Vanderpump Rules for 6 hours instead and ordering some food. I'm getting back at something. If you have that feeling, then you have to interrogate yourself. Like, what am I winning this time back from? Why do I feel so out of control that I need to reestablish control by taking time back? Because if you actually did feel well rested, moisturized, exercised, like had plenty of time for all the things that bring me pleasure and joy, you wouldn't feel like you needed to fight back against the shit that you hate in order to win back that time. So really strategically plot in your week times that are really fun for you and things that make you feel good about yourself and that bring you pleasure and rest and relaxation, so that you don't feel like you have to win that time back.
Sure, awesome. Yeah, I like that a lot. It's like controlled time management. They're very much linked. Not unfortunately, I like to keep talking, but 13:05, you gotta do the close off now. Thank you so much, Tina Lee. Amazing having you here. I'm enjoying some filtered coffee. I hope you are as well.
Yeah.
What a legend. All right, guys. Let's give it up for Tina Lee. All right, guys. I know y'all are clapping. Thank you so much, Tina. We really appreciate it.
Have a good one. Good luck, guys. Have a good day.